This evening on The Rock Newman Show, the state of the district. Mayor Muriel Bowser shares her plans to tackle the top issues in D.C., including affordable housing, education, gentrification, homelessness, development, and crime. That's coming up right now on The Rock Newman Show. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University, located in the nation's capital. I'm Rock Newman, and it is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. Here is Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser with a pitch that helped land the city on the shortlist for Amazon's second headquarters.
They want to be on the East Coast, right? Well, it makes sense. They have the West Coast Washington and the East Coast Washington. Jeff owns a house here already. Trying to attract 50,000 more employees. They're looking for a great place to live and to work. And they want to be able to walk around the city and have great restaurants and arts. Well, that's why 1,000 people move here every month. People know they're coming to D.C. because they can start and grow their businesses, and they have access to some of the most talented people in the top universities in the world. I'm sure Amazon employees are also just as committed as we are to being green and sustainable. They're making big decisions around shopping and dining and changing the world, and we do the same thing right here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much for
Rock,
joining us.
how are you?
You have a never-ending schedule, and for you to take time out and come see us makes us really happy.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you very
It's
much.
actually been too long since I've been here.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. Can't make it that long next time.
Okay, don't worry.
All right. Salesperson in chief.
Yes.
For Washington, D.C., talking about the Amazon. We can, so many places we can start.
Yes.
Let's start there.
Well, it's big. It's a big opportunity for our city and for our region. And part of my job is being the salesperson, the chief and top recruiter, #1 cheerleader for Washington, D.C. And it's a good thing we have a good city to sell. And that means that we are trying to attract new workers, new residents, new businesses, visitors from around the world. And that's what I do when I go around the region, the nation, and the world talking about our city. So what Amazon could do for us is create a pipeline for employment for DC residents.
How many?
50,000 is what they expect to employ.
So that's a projected
That's
real
a
number.
projected real number. Over the course, they would build out. They wouldn't all descend, but they would build out over the course of 10 years. And we are proposing that we, with our regional universities, create a specified curriculum for training so that DC residents are qualifying for those jobs as well. And what it provides for us is when people can get a good paying job, Rock, a great career, they can afford to live in Washington, D.C.
So let me ask you, so yesterday's Washington Post,
Yes.
you see something from a Maryland representative to say that they're prepared to roll out $2 billion worth of infrastructure and a whole bunch of other stuff to attract Amazon. Did that scare you?
Well, I've heard them talking about a big package, and their sites may require that. Our sites don't. Our sites are squarely in the nation's capital. We have included 4 very distinct sites that can accommodate what Amazon says it needs. They want their employees to be in livable, walkable communities. They want access to great talent, and they want to go in a neighborhood. Their first headquarters is kind of in an enclave. Their employees spend all their time going back and forth to work and don't really interact with the community. So one of our sites is right here at Howard University, Shaw area, where they could have and build buildings to accommodate their needs for years to come.
Well, what I would like to offer is that in the event that you need any other helping to sell, is that you're talking about Howard University and the Shaw community. I raised my hand.
All right, I'm all for that.
We're here to help.
All right.
We promoted a few things in our lifetime.
Absolutely. And you know, we were very grateful that Howard University stepped up to be a part of this proposal. They have a lot of land here, and they want a pipeline for their students too.
Sure.
They're training the technologists of the future and entrepreneurs of the future right here at Howard University, and that could be a great partnership.
So, you know, to that point, let me ask you, you mentioned about sort of what is the education component of what this city offers.
Yes.
American, Catholic, Georgetown, George Washington, Howard University, University of District of Columbia,
Trinity,
and a couple others that I'm, you know, not mentioning. So how do you, as the mayor, see this town? Do you delineate from it being just sort of the K Street corridor and sort of the lobbying power, the political aspect, to the technical aspect? Is this a university town?
Well, it's a town of neighborhoods and almost 700,000 people. And part of what we have to get away from is being known only as a government town. The truth is we have grown more private sector jobs over the last 7 or 8 years than we have government jobs. The sequestration that kind of stopped the growth of government, the defense side, and all of that, we've seen federal jobs actually shrink in the region, and we continue to grow private sector jobs. So the bottom line for us is we have to evolve our economy. We can't just be focused on the federal government. We have to attract private sector jobs. And we have to be a town that can attract big business too, because there are many cities you can go and you'll have a dozen Fortune 500 companies. In Washington, we have 1. And so part of our strategy is to make sure we're attracting all kinds of businesses, and that's small businesses too. The backbone of any economy, including ours, is going to be small businesses. And one thing that we are very proud of, in the 3 years I've been mayor, we have grown our CBE program, our Certified Business Enterprise program. And many of the leaders of those new companies are African Americans who are saying, hey, we want to work with DC government. We want to work with the federal government. We want to hire DC residents. So we want to make sure that we have programs that are supporting them getting started and growing their businesses right here in DC.
You know, in my many life recantations, I once lived in Las Vegas. And I remember sitting out there and kind of reading, you know, sort of the gloating of the newspaper, the boasting, feeling good and proud about Sin City, if you will, that it was for maybe 10 out of 15 years the fastest growing city in the country. And it was real clear. It was sort of the bling, it was the gaming industry that was attracting all these people, it was booming jobs and the rest. What is it, and DC now, you know, I see you say rather proudly, I won't say smugly, but rather proudly.
Well, you got to be proud of your hometown.
Your own horn, right?
If you're not proud of your hometown, you got a problem.
So, what is it that is attracting 1,000 people a month now?
It's opportunity. So people can come here and work and have a good quality of life. And so I will say there wasn't always a time when we were growing like
Oh,
this.
it was going down.
We were going down.
Yeah.
And probably the late 90s was when Mayor Williams at the time proclaimed that we would attract 100,000 new residents. And everybody thought he was crazy. And we've managed to do it and do more than that. But people are coming here because they can find a good paying job. Forbes just called us, and they have for several years, the best place for African Americans in the country. So people can come here and get a good job. Now, what we're focused on and why I released this toolkit for African American prosperity is we don't want our African American middle class to fall behind. And what we know is that more African Americans have left the city than have moved to the city. And so that's why you see the number of African Americans decreasing. And so what we want to make sure is that everybody who, like my family, has been here 5 generations, or people who just moved here, they know everything that we're doing to support DC residents getting good paying jobs, affordable housing, or starting and growing their businesses.
So I want to ask you about this, because when I first got my hands on this, A Fair Shot, and it boldly proclaims on the front, our toolkit for African American prosperity. So I've been involved with a few political campaigns, and there are calculations as to what is being said based on who the electorate is, who might be casting a vote. And so I had a question. In terms of political calculation. There are more and more whites moving into the district. And so more and more they're going to make up voting population. And so you, and obviously and unabashedly, some would say crazy, some might say politically risky way, stepped out and says a toolkit for African American prosperity, understanding that there may be some backlash to that.
Well, I hope not. And I think that I know Washingtonians well enough to say that people are really pulling for each other. Where you're African American, white American, Latino, people are really pulling for each other and want this to be a city that works for everyone. And people of all races and backgrounds and economic standing are concerned about the prices going up in D.C. because that's not just affecting the lowest of incomes. It's not just affecting African Americans, it's affecting everybody. So when we talk about a fair shot and a toolkit, what we just want to lay kind of the roadmap out there to say if you want to stay here in the city, we put these programs in place to help you. Because one big group of people that I focus on is DC government employees. 33,000 people work for DC government. In the last year, we were able to negotiate new contracts that gave them a raise that hadn't been done in more than 5 years. Our teachers, for example, hadn't had a raise in 5 years. We just gave a raise to 10,000 employees. Many of them are DPW workers, people that are driving our school buses and the like. They're going to get their raise. But the reason we focus on them is they have a good paying job. They have great insurance and great benefits, and they have job security. And that is important when you are trying to build wealth. We know that the biggest ways that African Americans build wealth is in the homes that they own and live in. And we want to encourage more people to choose DC neighborhoods, especially among our employees. So we doubled the employee assistance program for first-time homebuyers. And it's a special focus on our first responders, our firefighters and police. We have some great stories about them buying in the neighborhoods where they work. But all of our workers should be choosing. That is just one, and I think the fastest way to help stabilize the middle class.
You just did something, there was an initiative where there were several houses. Abandoned or otherwise. That there was a bid process. Tell us about that.
Well, we have a program called Vacant to Vibrant.
Vacant to Vibrant.
Yes. And we don't have the vacant property problem that many cities have. You're not going to go anywhere in Washington and see a whole block of abandoned buildings. So that's not our vacant property problem. But we do have vacant lots scattered throughout the city. We have a vacant house on this block scattered, throughout the city. And vacant property brings down values, it promotes other nuisance activity, and it really makes neighbors mad. And it doesn't help us either because those properties are off the tax rolls. So what I asked my Department of Housing and Community Development to do is dispose of all those properties, find somebody to build some housing on it, build some trees on it, build play space on it for the neighborhoods. We're even using one of the lots to test a tiny home project because one thing we know is that we have to build more affordable housing in the city to keep up with the demand, and we have to look at it from every aspect, and tiny homes may be the solution.
And the tiny homes are the tiny homes that you see pop up on Facebook sometimes says it's 240 square feet or 300
Yeah, this
square
one
feet.
is about, I think, 300 square feet that we're testing. But I was just with somebody yesterday that showed me one that was, almost 2,000 square feet that they built in a factory and assembled in 7 days. And so if we can get down the cost of building affordable housing, it can be a part of our solution. But what we're trying to, and I hope that initiative demonstrates, is we're throwing everything at this problem.
I was going to ask you.
Throwing it all.
I was going to ask you on that. Do we still go from A to
Yes.
Z, and A is affordable housing?
Yes.
So, if you could tell the audience here that are looking in, because that is something when you ask the question, what are some of the challenges of 2018 Washington D.C.? You talk about a gentrification, and ultimately, what's it's not far that you step from gentrification to how are you going to maintain and continue some of the identity of the neighborhoods through affordable housing? How are you going to do that?
Well, what we've done over the last 3 years is just try to build more and make sure the government was a part of it. We have a tool called the Housing Production Trust Fund. When I became mayor, we were spending about $50 million out of that fund. So I said, that's not enough, we have to double it. And we did, and we have for the last 3 years. So $100 million the first year, another $100 million the second year, and another $100 million. And we're going to propose $100 million to the council this year as well. So in 3 years, we were able to produce 5,000 units. I know we've made things better, the systems are smoother, so in another 4 years, God willing, we'll be able to double that and produce 10,000 units of affordable housing. And I've actually challenged the region, like if Amazon comes here, if they come to D.C., if they go to Maryland or Virginia, I think as a region, we're going to have to produce 25,000 units in about 5 or 6 years. And I know that we can do it. The nonprofit and for-profit development communities, they're ready. And so we have to be smarter and bolder about affordable housing policies.
And so for someone sitting out who might not understand, so you put this $100 million a year into it. How does that impact, how does that benefit that first-time homeowner that's coming in to try to get a roof over their head in the district?
That one in particular focuses on how we build new units or preserve units that might flip to condos, for example. So what it would mean is, let's say we have a block that a property owner wants to build something on. And so they could build it and not have any affordable housing, which is bad. Or they can build it with affordable housing, and then they come to the city to say, I want to build these units. They're going to be below market rate, which means I'm going to lose money. So city, do you want to be my partner? And so we say yes, and then we basically buy down the cost of those affordable housing units so somebody can go in there below market rate. So that's what we mean when we say we built 5,000 affordable units.
Okay, all right. So that was A. So let's see, if I go to B, I say babies.
Yes.
I had a conversation with someone.
There's a baby boom in DC.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
And a lot of love going around.
Yes, that's good.
So now, the conversation I had with someone who knew that you were going to be on today was to ask the question of there not being a place in Ward 7 and 8 that delivers babies now.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to change?
That is going to change. We expect to build a new hospital on the east side of the city, but more than that, we expect to be able to attract obstetricians and gynecologists to serve people in Ward 7 and 8. One thing we know about moms is they follow their doctors, and if their doctors aren't in Ward 7 and 8 working with a hospital in Ward 7 and 8, they won't be either. So even if we build a new hospital and we haven't fixed the problem of how we get specialists to serve moms in Ward 7 and 8, they're still going to come to Northwest. So that is complicated. It's been complicated over the years. And moms in Ward 7 and 8 have been choosing to deliver in Northwest for years. The obstetrics unit at the hospital that is on the east side of the city had to close because it just wasn't performing at a level that women in Ward 7 and 8 deserve. And DOH made the difficult decision to close it down. But even then, the year before, they had delivered about 400 babies out of 10,000. So what that suggests is that the women in Ward 7 and 8 were already choosing to deliver at Northwest hospitals. So we have to have a big vision about how we attract a partner to help us run a hospital. So the district isn't involved in running a hospital. Governments don't do a good job at it. But simultaneously work on how we fix the kind of financial equation for physicians so that they are working in our community health clinics in Ward 7 and 8 and that their specialists, especially OBGYNs, are working in Ward 7 and 8.
So the partner, is that somebody that, is there a local, a regional, international search for a partner?
We've been at it for solidly for 3 years to find a hospital operator, could be an academic partner as well, that has a medical component, and I think we're getting closer and closer.
You care to reveal?
No, we haven't made any decisions, but we are getting to a point where we have interested enough partners where we think that we'll find the one that is the perfect match for the district.
Okay, so as we're going through, as I said, A to Z, so we're talking about the babies, and babies become children.
Yes.
they start going to school.
Okay.
In the news, you know, there's been some headlines.
Yes.
That I'm sure, you know, alarm you.
Regrettable, absolutely.
Ballou High School graduation rate, and people are graduating that absolutely should not be graduating. Their literacy is not nearly up to par.
No, they weren't eligible for graduation, we found out, because of their attendance. That they had violated attendance policies. And what we have a system called credit recovery. If a student fails a class, they're eligible to try to make it up in credit recovery. And there were also violations there. I mean, I think the bottom line is, as you noted, is it's some of the most difficult news that I've ever had to deliver to DC residents. But I also told them that we kind of clear on what we needed to fix kind of in the bureaucracy. Unfortunately, we had to let some people go who I think should have done a better job in making sure that the high schools were being held accountable, that they were being trained properly, and that there were some controls in place around complying with graduation requirements. We had to let some people go in the schools as well who were also not adhering to policies. But I think there's a bigger issue because we're going to fix that bureaucracy side. But we also have to fix the side that says, why aren't kids coming to school? Family. Why aren't kids coming to school? Community. And what are we going to do to make it compelling for them to show up to school each and every day?
Let me stay there for a moment, because you know, you have been portrayed and recognized as somebody that really kind of stays even keel.
Yes.
You know, you a lot of problems have come your way. Sort of the good and bad, you take it, you know, in a level-headed manner.
Right.
When you heard that news did you get like really angry?
I was really angry that I didn't know sooner, that we hadn't discovered it sooner. That makes me really angry. I'm really angry that kids were cheated out of the opportunity of high expectations. You know, you don't do a kid any good by saying you only have to come to school half the time.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work that way in the world.
Yeah.
And that makes me very angry. I'm also angry about making sure we don't lose all the progress we made.
Yeah.
Because we've made a lot of progress. Our schools are nowhere near the same as they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we were hardly keeping our buildings open on time.
Right.
You would walk into a school building at this time of year and it would probably be cold and the kids were in their coats.
Right.
We couldn't start some classes on time because there hadn't been enough teachers hired. So we're nowhere near that place. I was in a middle school today, Sousa Middle School in Ward 7, where I recognized the kids for improved attendance. We're even seeing a positive trajectory, because when I started out, you may remember that I ran on middle schools. And we're beginning to see a positive trajectory where we have more middle school students this year than we did last year. So as we build that confidence, we have a lot of confidence from our parents. And you mentioned that we had a baby boom, we're having a baby boom. So we have pre-K3 that's free in the district, and parents have a lot of confidence in that. The lower grades have improved so much. We see our national park scores going in the right direction. And we have more people who are choosing public education in the district. So that's all good news. So I don't want us to lose that because we have some things still to fix. We know we have to still work on high schools, and we're going to do it. And we have the right man for the job. His name is Antoine Wilson.
Okay.
He's the new chancellor for DCPS, and he's been on the job about a year.
Right.
We recruited him out of Oakland. He spent a lot of time in Denver as a teacher, a principal, and administrator, and we're very lucky to have him at DCPS.
Talking about education, last week I was up at Ellington.
Yes. Thank you.
What a grand place. What is the role of DC government in the restoration of that place to make it the jewel that it is right now? And I just would advocate for my viewers.
Right.
If you ever get a chance, you got some
it.
time on your
Right.
hand, go look at Ellington.
Absolutely. So
It's a monument.
It is, well, it's a school.
Yeah.
It's actually two schools in a way, because you have the academic side of Ellington and you have the performance side.
Sure.
And we got some criticism, quite frankly, from some who thought it cost too much, but it's not just one school building. It's basically the school and the performance center. And our kids deserve it. We are training artists there and many talented folks. We welcome Dave Chappelle back to Ellington in the fall, and he had just some powerful words for the kids that, you know, better than I could say. They really focused on what he's saying. So the government, DC government, embarked, part of our school reform movement 10 years ago, on fixing our buildings. And we have done exactly that. We have about $4 billion worth of investment just in the buildings. We have about $1 billion worth of work yet to do on the remainder of the buildings. But Ellington was one of the last in the high schools to be done. The last high school to be done is Calvin Coolidge, which starts this year.
So we're going to come back to this because I really want to talk. I really want to talk about the fair shots. I mentioned something a little bit earlier that I thought you took a little. It took some political courage to do, calling this the way it is.
Right.
And here's something here. Sometime within the next, I think, certainly within the next 30 days, there is going to be the unveiling of a statue on Pennsylvania Avenue of someone affectionately called Mayor for Life, Marion Barry. And that wouldn't happen without your support. So again, why did you give your support to that?
It's important for us as a city that's changing as fast as ours, to always remember our history. All of it, and it all its colors, good, bad, all its bumps and everything else, to remember our history. And I feel that I have a unique responsibility to make sure that happens. And I knew that when I ran for mayor 4 years ago, that we are in kind of a unique time in our city, and it's going to be important that we step up and do everything that we can do to preserve it. The truth is, and none of us profits from having a city that just becomes kind of bland. You know what I mean? And people
Bland and Marion Barry don't even go in the same conversation.
They don't go. There will never be another 4-term mayor of Washington D.C. in my view. And he was a 4-term mayor. There will never be somebody who was on this, well, maybe on the school board, on the city council, and mayor, and has the civil rights bona fides of leading SNCC. I mean, that is
and got shot.
And got shot at that building.
At that building,
and
right.
so it is remarkable. And I'm not sure that anybody will be able to go across all 8 wards. Now, keep in mind, and I called him Mr. Barry. Mr. Barry was very sensitive about being pigeonholed into one thing. He wasn't just the summer jobs mayor. He was also the mayor that made sure we could transform Chinatown and bring economic development downtown. And now we have a robust and growing Chinatown. He was also the mayor that was very supportive of the University of the District of Columbia in Ward 3. And it was very...
And senior citizens all over.
And senior citizens all over. So he had a lot of skills, and he was also very acclaimed in his first term for the amount of women he hired and supported in government service. So I think that he is very deserving. I am paneled, and I think you are right that there could have been a big, long, protracted debate about what to do to celebrate Mr. Barry. But I thought if we put together a commission, give him only a short period of time to work, come back with some recommendations, build the consensus that was necessary. And I got to give a lot of credit to Cora Barry, who has been just been incredible throughout this process to work with the city so that the city could pay tribute. Because now we're not really talking about the man, her husband, or Chris's father. We're talking about who he was to the city and who he's going to, with the last generation and the generations to come.
Did you get pushback?
I mean, I think we've gotten some expected criticism. We didn't get any pushback from the council, who endorsed the commission's recommendations and the citing of the statute. And I'm going to celebrate with the members of the council and many notables the dedication of the statute on March the 3rd. March the 3rd.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's get back into the pathways to middle class. A fair shot, a toolkit for African American prosperity. Starting with pathways to middle class.
Yes.
Talk about jobs and economic opportunity.
Sure. So it is very important, because when people say housing is too expensive here, the other part of the equation is I don't earn enough money to afford the housing here. So we have to work on both. We have to work on bringing the housing prices down, and we do that with more supply. And we have to work on making sure people can better afford everything: housing, transportation, education, you name it. And so one thing that was very important for me, and we did get pushback from it, is to increase the minimum wage in Washington, D.C. So a lot of cities like ours, progressive cities, started this process, and we actually got it done, and we got it done in short order. So by 2020, we will increase the minimum wage in D.C. To $15 an hour. And so we know that would mean 2 minimum wage earning families can make it. They're still struggling, but they can make it. And so we want to always do that. Then we want to have opportunities for those workers to do something else where they're going to earn more money. So we are starting an infrastructure academy that's going to focus on what the work that Pepco's doing and Metro's doing and Washington Gas is doing and DC Water is doing. Do you know, last year, we had 2,500 of those jobs go unfilled. And so we have to make sure that we're putting our workers in there. And the average salaries there are $48,000 a year. So we've been very focused on how we can increase getting money in people's pockets. And then
So you're actively engaging the public sector,
we're actively
private sector.
the quasi-public, really, because all of those utilities that I've just mentioned are ratepayer funded, and we're paying for them, and we want them to focus on hiring our residents. And they have been good partners with us in standing up the Infrastructure Academy. We've also focused on how more D.C. residents can get jobs that we're producing in D.C. For example, we're always hiring police officers. We want D.C. residents in those jobs. So I have extended the age of the cadet program where a lot of DC residents can come in and be hired. And we have to also focus on second chance job opportunities. We have a number of our brothers and sisters that come to DC that need a second chance because they've been involved in the criminal justice system. And so how we get them into subsidized employment so some employer is willing to take a chance on them has our attention as well.
Okay. So that is jobs and economic opportunity. I don't know exactly how to tie this together, but sort of at the other end is what has been something that has plagued the city for such a long time, and that's homelessness.
Yes.
And the homelessness here, it may cost the city as a result of some policy, maybe as much as anywhere in the country, huh?
I'm sure, yes, because we're different in the region. So in Maryland and Virginia, you won't hear people talking about homelessness like they do here, largely because we in D.C. have a law that says in the winter months, anybody who presents to the city must be housed. And so we have, over the years, that system is kind of gotten out of whack, if you ask me, because a lot of times, first of all, people from around the region are coming to get services from us who aren't even DC residents. And it's become kind of a queue for affordable housing when it should be just for emergencies. So we've been focused on how to change that system, how to have better housing for families. You know, we've been focused on closing DC General, which is an old hospital that's been used as a family shelter, which is not safe. So we will shutter and demolish that building and create smaller units of short-term family housing for families who are experiencing an emergency. And we're also very focused on our unsheltered residents who are out on the street. We have shelter space for them. We want them to come in from out of the cold. We want them to get out of tents and get into shelter where we can really figure out how we can support the issues that have made it hard for them to get by.
You know, let me give a personal note. Prior to Dick Gregory passing away, we went over to DC. I accompanied him going over to DC General. He had been invited by the guys, by the operation that feeds the folks there at DC General. I happen to know them. And it was in the evening, around dinner time. And the food that was served over there was simply beyond outstanding. I mean, there probably are a whole lot of complaints. You always hear the noise. But I'm telling you that I, along with a couple of other friends of mine who were in there, certainly enjoyed the meal that came.
Well, certainly we want to treat our families well when they're having an emergency, but can you imagine how good it would be if they were having it in their own home?
At their own place,
And they would trade anything for that. And so that's what we, the city can be supportive during emergencies, but we don't want anybody to think that that's all they deserve. They deserve to have their own home too.
Public safety, police, this is a whole lot of categories. I asked the question on Facebook, the mayor's going to be on, what do you want to ask her? So part of what they wanted to ask about was how to better expedite sort of the nuts and bolts of people's lives and how it impacts them? How are we going to fix the potholes in the streets? How are we going to get our streets better?
Well, it's a good question, right? And so in my last budget, we increased what we're going to do around roads. Now, the truth is our main arterials are in pretty good shape. We have a good schedule of keeping them in repair and repaving them. The same is not true for our neighborhood streets. And we know that 3 out of 10, and it could be even higher, are in very poor condition. So I have increased the budget. This spring, we're going to have a new program that we're rolling out that should move faster. And we're modeling it after a program that I started called Alley Palooza. And Alley Palooza has allowed us to do in 3 years more alleys than I'm telling you that they did the whole time I was on the city council, which was 8 years. That may be an exaggeration, but it doesn't seem so.
Pretty cool
But
name.
anyway,
Pretty cool name.
Alley Palooza.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of program that we're going to roll out for local roads so that we can get them done faster. We've added some resources. We're doing more around technology, and we'll get to more roads. I think where everybody would like to get is a schedule where every 5 or 6 years we're seeing repaving. But this is what I ask everybody. You have to stick with this road repair, because sometimes what happens is I'll send that very big budget to the council and they'll slice $1 million here and $1 million there and $1 million there. And over the course of time, that's a lot of road work that didn't get done.
Right. There was another comment about roads also, and this comment was to say that that they wanted the mayor to create some kind of provision to prevent this, what some people call this insane parade that the president wants to have with military vehicles coming down and tearing up streets.
They're talking about it all day. And I think even more than the streets, because we can deal with the streets, that's fixable with paving, but the spectacle of watching these parades of old coming down the nation's capital is, it concerns me. It concerns me.
Do you try to have any impact on that? Do you try to reach out? Will you attempt to reason with the powers?
We talk to them all the time. They have a lot of federal land here that impacts D.C. residents. We worked with them last year to fix a bridge that they own by the National Park Service, the Arlington Memorial Bridge. Now they finally have a plan to do it. We are working with them on Franklin Park at 13th and K to get that. We want our golf courses back, and we want RFK. So all of those things are kind of the federal projects that we have to deal with. Now we also, we control America's Main Street. It's also our main street on Pennsylvania Avenue where parades like this, inaugurations like this will happen. So my concern is, what message does that send? And that's not as a Washingtonian, but as an American. What are we saying when we do that? That's number one. Number two, I have to be concerned about public safety. And we support national security events all the time. We're good at it, but it means that more police would be necessary, and it means they have to give us the money to pay for it, because otherwise DC residents could be out $20 to $30 million to pay for a parade with no purpose.
You mentioned RFK, which prompts me to ask, have there been any further discussions about the possibility of Washington's football team coming back in the city?
What we've been focused on, Rock, is the land and making sure that we can control it for years to come. So we need the federal government to extend our lease and to
where RFK
and
the Armory now sits.
We want a 99-year lease extended, or they could transfer it to us outright, which would be fine too. And they have to remove the provision that we can only do sports and entertainment on it. We have no interest in it just for a stadium. It has to have a mix of uses. Park space, and we're going to do some soccer fields there this spring, for example. Housing, an employment center, and a stadium.
Okay, so but nothing with Snyder about.
I believe that
because 2020 their time is up.
I think mid-20s.
Yeah. Okay.
And They're going to make the decision to come to the best city in the world. I have no doubt about that.
Do you think that would be, if that were the case, is that the location?
Oh, that's the only location. It's the only location for us, and I haven't really seen a better location anywhere in the region.
Okay. So let's go back to when we talk about public safety. The crime rate. Tell us about what it is that your administration is doing to cut down on what have been the most significant problems with crime, and what it is you're doing to promote more and better relations between the community and policing.
Well, we saw at the end of last year a significant drop in crime on the areas that most concern everybody: homicides, a use of a gun in a crime, robbery, burglary. All of those numbers went down. Sadly, though, that wasn't the case for every neighborhood. So we had some neighborhoods where we still see too much gunplay, and we still see too many shootings, and quite frankly, too many homicides. We had too many young people involved in violence, and just too many guns being used on our streets. So we have tried, from a law enforcement point of view, used a lot of different strategies to get to illegal guns. And the very simple fact is there are a small group of people who are using guns. This is not widespread, and many folks who are using those guns have been involved in crimes before. So we're really focused on the people who are most likely to offend. We stood up a new office. The council passed a law they call the NEAR Act, which is meant to prevent violent crime before it happens without law enforcement. So our new director for that office is really focused on how do we keep those folks who we know are likely to offend and use guns from using guns. And they're using all kinds of strategies, from helping them get into employment to behavioral health and substance abuse issues, and wraparound services for their entire family. And we're hopeful that that keeps them from being involved in the type of gunplay that you see. But I had a very unfortunate experience, and the community had a very unfortunate experience. We were out in the community talking about the killing, a shooting of a 14-year-old. And immediately thereafter, some blocks away, there was a shooting, and a woman lost her life just standing on a corner. And so anytime we still have that type of jarring violence, we know we have people out there who have total disregard for life, theirs, and anybody else's. And we got to get the guns out of their hands.
And of course, sort of one of the foundations and fundamentals of stopping violence, tamping it down, is indeed education.
Yes.
And that's in your pathway to the middle class that you talk about. Let me ask you something, because I remember, I think early on when you got into office, there was like a, I know the president from here, Dr. Frederick, was a part of your innovative lab. Initiative. Yes,
we still have a lab here that's on the Howard campus on Georgia Avenue. So Howard is providing the space, and we are helping technology companies incubate. One thing about young people, this millennial generation, is a lot of them are starting businesses. A lot of our a lot of our folks who need a second chance opportunity are starting businesses, and they're very entrepreneurially motivated. So how do we kind of encourage that with subsidized space or helping them gain capital? We have a program called Aspire that is for returning citizens who want to start a business, and we've had several success stories with helping them get the business started, find customers, and attract capital to help grow their business. So that's hugely important.
You know, I looked at something. I noticed some of the awards that you guys have gotten from your Office of Cable and Television.
Yes, it's incredible.
Man, you all are rocking over there.
Yes, thank you. And what we want to do is we want to put DC on the map for entertainment, and not just for the glitz of it, but because it creates jobs. And we have been very focused on our creative economy. I hired Angie Gates, who's had decades of experience.
Does she ever not work? I
No,
mean,
she works very hard. She likes to work.
Anytime, I know her.
Yes.
And anytime you try to reach her, for the most part, she's working.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what hour it is.
Yes. No, she's fantastic. And at the beginning of my term, I combined two offices.
Yeah.
The Office of Cable Television.
Gave her a whole lot of responsibility.
And the Office of Motion Pictures.
Right.
We put them together, and it was among the best decisions I've made for our creative economy, putting those together. And we also, you know, we have a radio station. Thank you, Howard University, for providing us the space.
Yeah, there's a collaboration there.
It's a collaboration with our radio station, so we're going to have a lot more programming on the radio. In addition to Channel 13 and 16 and our Knowledge Network, we also have this radio station, so people can figure out, because I can produce this book, right? Yeah. But, you know, next week I'm going to add another program that won't be in this book. Right. So we want a continuous flow of information to people about how the government is working for them.
You got a campaign.
I do.
You are going to run for mayor again, right?
I'm running for mayor, Rock.
Okay, you were right now with your work, huh?
No, I'm running for mayor. I announced in September. I'll be in the Democratic primary in June.
Who's your competition?
Well, we don't know, and the way I've always run my campaigns, and somebody told me when I first started out of college, and my very first job, I worked for State Farm Insurance, and there were a lot of kind of type A climbers in that came into those jobs, and one of the managers at the time said, you know, all you all that are falling over yourselves trying to get promoted, just do your job. And if you just do your job, people will recognize it, and they'll ask you to come back. And so we try to work really hard. Now, part of any campaign is talking to everybody, any campaign that I run. Right. And so we'll go like we did the last time across all 8 wards of the city, hear what people are talking about, what their concerns are, and how we can continue to challenge ourselves. But I got to tell you, what makes me most proud is that people are proud of Washington. Proud to be from D.C. They're wearing their stars and bars on T-shirts, on hats, on tattoos. They're putting D.C. flags up on their homes. They're proud of D.C. So they want to move here. They want to start businesses here, have children here, put their kids in our schools, and they're also proud of their government.
We have a little less than 5 minutes left, and I've got about 2 more hours of questions to ask you. But if we could quickly touch on statehood.
Sure.
Anything happening?
Well, we had a big vote. That was the other vote that happened when Donald Trump got elected. We had a massive vote for statehood in the district. Over 80% of Washingtonians said that they wanted to become a state, and that's the first time we've ever had such a huge number. I do think some things are going to have to line up politically, and we have a Republican Congress that's not for D.C. statehood. At least they're not for D.C. statehood as long as it's just D.C. I quite frankly think if we had a more conservative jurisdiction that tried to come in, we may have a shot.
Let me ask you, if you would, what do you consider to be, we talked about a lot of stuff here.
Yes.
Pathway, the toolkit, and all the rest. So if you had your magic wand, what would your administration, you had your magic wand, that would make you win, because the magic wand can do that, it can make you win. What would be your administration's top priority for the next 4 years? That's a top couple of priorities.
Yeah, there are a lot of things we have to do. Making sure that we right the ship at DCPS is my #1 priority, and we will do that. We have a roadmap to get it done, and I want everybody listening to know it has my 100% resolve.
DCPS, DC Public Schools.
DC Public Schools, and they will be confident in what we're doing. I also think it's very important that we are growing our middle class, and so we're going to continue a lot of programs that we have around housing and employment to make sure that we're not becoming a city of only the very well off that can afford to live here. I'm also very concerned about metro and transportation, because another part of a growing city is you have to be able to get around.
Right.
So people have to be safe, they have to have quality housing, but they also have to be able to move around. And focusing on how we get a real regional solution for metro is big for me.
So what do you find? What do you think your biggest challenges are as you wrap up this last year of your term?
Well, we don't consider it wrapping it up. We have just as much energy as the very first day, and I check in with the public every year to say, this is what we promised that we would do, and here's where we are. So I am all about transparency and accountability. Somebody told me the other day that they couldn't believe how achingly honest we were about what we found in the schools. And I said, that's our only choice, is to, because I can never promise that bad things won't happen in a city, because bad things happen in cities. But I can promise you that we're going to respond, we're going to be honest, we're going to tell you how we're going to fix them, and we will fix them. We have the resolve and the talent to do it.
You excited about what's happening east of the river?
Absolutely.
One of the things I read recently in the newspaper is that the Busboys and Poets is going to happen on Martin Luther King Avenue.
Yes, and so we are excited. We have invested a lot in our east of the river communities. Part of the Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic Opportunity, Courtney Snowden, is her office that produced this toolkit, and I created that office for the sole purpose of focusing on underrepresented and underinvested in communities, because that is what has happened in a lot of Ward 7 and Ward 8 neighborhoods over decades. So we made a huge investment in St. Elizabeth's to open the sports and entertainment arena and everything else that goes with that development. We're also making investments along Martin Luther King that will allow Busboys and Poets to go in a development there, as well as the first standalone Starbucks. So it's all of these signals to the market that people in Ward 7 and 8 want the same things that everybody else wants. Sit-down dining, coffee, groceries, which we're still working on attracting another grocer.
Can't thank you enough for
Thank you, Rob.
joining us. Let's look at the camera and wish my wife, Dee Dee, a happy birthday. Happy birthday,
Happy
girlfriend.
birthday, Dee Dee.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Folks, that wraps us for this evening. For more information on this program or any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org. Goodbye and God bless you.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.